families, and nobody knows. Like, if you're not quite awake, then you don't really know, right? If someone isn't willing to look at themselves, how would they know that they have narcissistic tendencies? How would they know that every conversation is going back to them and their story, their wound, their victimhood? We don't know these things. So we have to meet each other with as much love as possible. So I apologize for being broad if I am too, but the work that it really is most of the work though, isn't it? It really is a lot of it. Coming to understand ourselves first, understand our narthas, our unwanted, we call it tendencies, or you could look at an astrological chart and see these things, but no one's doing that. And it's one of the only like real sciences. And that's why, as a culture, the Indian culture is really awesome studying Jyotish. The Greeks also did it, and so did the Egyptians. So did many cultures. But just to look at yourself isn't enough. You have to be in yourself. So you have to have a guide or a navigation system to do that. And most of the spiritual world right now is saying, we are God. I am God. I can do everything. And in itself, that's probably not going to work in time. So how do we bridge that is not just paying attention to the narcissism, the ego, the obsessiveness, the compulsiveness, or the negativity, but refocusing on what we have that is similar, which is these divine qualities. And it's only going to be in feeling. So control is probably what it comes down to. Everyone's need and desire to control. And if that is running the narrative inside of you, when you meet someone or you meet like anybody, if there is I call it a hole in the bucket. If there's a deep wound or a deep hole that hasn't been dealt with, that person needs to heal. And so naturally their tendencies will come up, whether it takes it's the first time you meet or over a period of time. And so when we're in a weakened state or we're in a vulnerable state, we are very like baby birds, and we can be hurt, and we deal with ego. So doing radical vulnerability work is really, it's vital for me. It's the scraping the soul stuff that is where you get to the strength and confidence.
Could you speak a little bit more about radical vulnerability?
Radical vulnerability is one of the ways that we connect to sacred sovereignty in relationship. So we practice relating to each other as full spectrum human beings, my husband and I, and we relate that way to our daughter. And we pretty much relate that way to everybody. And there is a very big power in allowing yourself to cry, in allowing yourself to feel, and into communicating that. So if I'm going to step up into relationship with someone, especially in this day and age, and I want to do business with them, I can't really show up as half a person. I actually have to show up radically honest and fully invested. So it's a strength that comes on the other side of that radical, radical vulnerability. Being happy is not something that's silly. It's quite a goal, because if we're cultivating, the radical vulnerability of knowing our shadow side, then we're going to get to show up full spectrum with someone else and feel their pain as well, and then not make it about ourselves. And that's like the step after compassion. It's empathy. And I believe that everybody is psychic and everybody has the opportunity to do that. But if we're covered from whatever, and we have generational covering, then we're going to not be able to meet people where they are. And then there's that the relationship is like, it can go down south very quickly and go sour. So radical vulnerability and communication leads to embodying like fierce joy and loyalty.
To yourself and to the other person.
Boundaries are really important. But what is a boundary? Why is there a boundary? Right? Rules and regulations are set up so that you can feel your inherent bliss. And this has become like quite a buzzword, and all my glories to the Vaishnavas who really understand what a sacred small taste that is, and the levels that help us get there. But it's a conversation we have in our Jaiva Dharma classes all the time. How can you embody bliss and follow rules and regulations in 24 hours a day, as you say, in a balanced way? So there's a system, and then there's just the rip roaring radical craziness of life. And we put that all comes together and it comes together in soul mapping, because it's a both and world. It's a chincha beta tattva. The truth is that there's always someone having pain or something I can relate to, as well as they have a boundary up because they need to hold their sacred sovereignty. So we can do the same.
So I don't mean to interrupt you.
Me too.
So boundaries, you're saying, are healthy and they're needed, but there's clearly a differentiation between boundaries and building a wall. So could you describe more about healthy boundaries versus like a wall that's, I guess, maybe built from out of defensiveness, so to speak, or out of being hurt and then not desiring to be hurt again or desiring to be hurt anymore?
It always really does come back to being present, right? But as far as the upgrade from boundaries that are walls to boundaries that are healthy, it comes back to how you master chaos and flip the script to make it abundance. For example, that's something that's really important. It's upgrading your mental landscape. So like, you're not seeing everyone as an enemy, you're seeing everything as an opportunity and every human as a flower on the garland of life. It's finding rhythm. It's finding the musicality of life and recognizing that, when we get wonky or off for whatever reason, you're not feeling good or you have a migraine, that you have tools and you have a team somewhere, you have to find it to upgrade and create a sweeter, more beautiful mental landscape. Make the kunj in your mind, as we would say. You have to practice powerful language. We need to upgrade our language and actually be able to speak. So coming from our root chakra and healing that stuff, healing the second chakra, healing the third, and be powerful, and then opening up from your heart, that radical vulnerability, so that we can speak. And that also includes, agya and wisdom and knowledge, and bringing in your psychic awareness. Everyone's walking around as an empath, not knowing it or knowing it, and then trying to bring it together. And that's what meditation is. And that's what talk therapy is. That's where you make amazing choices. And embodying, those divine qualities. So when I put up I don't put up boundaries or walls. I practice shielding from negativity. And this is probably what you want to hear. Demons are real. Demonic energy is real. Just like this word narcissism things move through us. So if someone's drinking alcohol a lot or whatever, it's not even a judgment. Our subtle body gets lighter, more confused. Maybe our liver's not working, sending toxins through our body. It's just an example of many. Drugs in general, it allows our aura to be more open, and then for stuff to come through. I'm holding my potty mouth because usually I swear more. So then I have to do the shielding work. And to do that, I have to know what my chakras are. I have to know what the subtle body is. And I have to understand how it radiates. And that's where science comes in, because science is not the pharmaceutical industry. That's what people are being led to believe, that science is about dealing only with the symptoms of something and then confusing the hell out of everyone. But if you study immunology and the positivity of how the body is, then you can start, practicing opening and closing up your subtle energy system. That is a boundary. That is a that is the stage you set for creating healthy boundaries. And then it almost doesn't need to be said. It will be, you do need to state your boundaries, but, that's where non-consent comes in first. I do not accept this demonic energy or this open, bull coming in and all your stuff coming at me. But if I'm held in my proper alignment, then you're going to feel that, and you're not even going to bring it. Then though, when the drama comes, which it always does, you can learn to process. And then you're processing emotions, you're processing your own healing, and you're connecting to God. Whoever God is for you, whoever source, whoever divinity is, it's absolutely vital to stop repeating traumas and then to put that into a system. And then practice that system, whether it's 1, 2, or 3 steps. That's how I have boundaries versus a wall.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm writing these things down because honestly, there was so much juice in there. When you mentioned about, seeing others as like flowers in a garland, and then trying to connect with the musicality in life and the rhythm and everything, it's that was so poetically put. And what I understood from it was sort of seeing the good in everyone, as opposed to coming with the lens of judgment. Because I think that oftentimes that's a fear for people. And I've noticed it even, I think, especially in the devotee community, just because we oftentimes, we understand that humility is so important. But it's almost hard when you see someone who maybe could be doing better or should be doing better, and then not criticizing. But that's oftentimes kind of how people's perspective is that, oh, they're judging me, or they're thinking poorly of me, or they probably think that I am XYZ, and it's a negative thought. So that's kind of how I understood when you said flowers in a garland. Is that kind of along the lines of what you were?
I love hearing you share and talk. Well, 2 things you made me think. Understanding is different from embodiment, right? Understanding something with our intelligence then can be integrated. That's the middle part, right? So we do a teacher training over 6 months because there is so much feeling and learning in these weekends. We're starting next week. Feeling and learning in those 8 hours a day or whatever of the yoga, and then, of bhakti and of kirtan and of mantra, and what do the mantras mean, and how do they feel, and where are our stories, and all that's part of it. while you're given this system, this yoga asana. But the yoga asana, just like the kirtan, just like the chanting, is an embodiment practice and a remembering practice. So remembering our beauty and remembering how to feel it has nothing to do with how much fat we have in our body or how much pain we're in. And I know that because I was born with pain, with migraines, and it's all the time, and it's always trying to get in the way, which means it's a gift, right? Somehow. So when you brought up the garlands, because I do believe we're all, this is a big time. We have been through a huge, what's the word? Depends on who you're coming from.
Yeah.
What are you going to say?
Transformation.
Transformation is here. The Renaissance is coming now. And so the garland is all of the souls that are here to protect, to endeavor and pioneer and create, the artists, the teachers. But everyone has that seed, to see all living entities as spiritual swans, right? As spiritual beings, one with God. These are the poetic lines and moments of aha, of genius, and of truth, even though truth can be a strange word, tattva, that are renamed and reclaimed in every religion there is, in every culture there is, in every society. And it's about the soul. It has nothing to do with man or woman or child or adult. It has to do with remembering and then protecting that and nurturing that while you give healthy boundaries. And I do feel devotees are really good at that. And I also know what you're saying and have experienced humbly some of the missing pieces or diseases or holes in certain communities, but it's in every community and it's in every person.
Could you actually talk a little bit more about like those holes that you've seen within the devotee communities?
Well, I'm really, really blessed and lucky because I'll just greedy, Hare Krishna, and I just run, to the devotees. Speaking of, right now, there's we moved all of everything to be near Bhakta Bandhav. It's down the street, and there's a lot going on there today. But there is a lot to be said for pioneering. What I've experienced and what I've learned is that, you have, let's just use devotees. And I know not everyone in the world understands what we're talking about per se, but a spiritual group comes together with ideals. And Srila Prabhupada created this in the West, creating family, like the whole thing about sovereignty is being self-sufficient, being with each other, growing. And then there's the giving and receiving of gifts and being humble and learning. That was established. Varnashram as best we can, understanding our skills and utilizing them. And then there was what Srila Gurudev came to give, and I should say first what was in India, which is the temple system, the brahmachari system, and the sannyas system. And then you have the Western world and the cultures. Each of those is missing something the other has. Even like the Varnashram system to the purity of the temple systems, there's definitely some missing connections. There's definitely, and I'm not sure exactly, I have my thoughts and ideas about what that is, and I hope to be part of the bridge work of it. I feel like that is the Dharma, is to bridge it. And that's why for the first 30 years, I didn't know who the devotees were. That's why, so that I could fully be enveloped and raised up in a very shocktified, like busy, painful, but yet subtly, not from my family per se, but the programs that were out there and the disease that was out there, I could feel it. And now all those 3 points are meeting, they get to meet right in the center, like a beautiful pyramid, and the power there. Some of the missing pieces do have to do with women and the idea of, I hear this all the time. I hear that all the differences between men and women. But when it comes to the soul, there are no differences. And of course, all the men are actually, servants of the goddess. I think one of the things that happens is Seva becomes so important, Seva, do, that we forget to do the inner work. I've seen that happen a lot. There is some sort of, like, a little bit, sometimes a sweeping under the rug of certain aspects of our humanity because they're uncomfortable to talk about. But those are exactly what needs to be talked about. So if brahmachari, which is an aspect of the limbs of yoga, which is really real, like pulling in your senses, pulling in your, it doesn't mean that you turn off completely your sensuality or your sexuality, because that is how you create. Prabhu talks about this so nicely, specifically about tension, right? About rajas, or about how things are built and created. That's why Lord Shiva is so important in the yoga world. Understanding the desire to make and create is artistry, but then there's a time where that has to get leashed in, right? Because it's too much. So talking about any of these issues that are uncomfortable to talk about, they have a spectrum, and we have to talk about them to get to the other side. You have to go through the portal. Can't ignore it. And there has to be a safe, sacred way to do that. And I think you're building that. I haven't even said, like, the idea of what you're offering, a Vedic health perspective, with the perspective of also bringing up and talking about the deep rooted issues that are not being talked about. That has to happen. And it doesn't happen so much when Seva is the most important thing to do, which is a beautiful thing. I love hosting and I love serving, and I don't know how I'll ever have enough time in the day, but we have so much to offer from the Vedic perspective when it comes to children, when it comes to child care, when it comes to trauma, when it comes to the misuse of this idea of pulling in the senses, and then it goes off the wall and people do bad things, or they scream and they hurt people, or they freak out, or God forbid, take advantage of someone, molestation, rape. These are like horrible things that happen. You could say it's a demon coming through. You can throw a million things at it, but the root of it is some dis-ease or hole that has to be filled with something. And that starts with communicating about it. So that does happen. I've experienced that, and even about little things, even about like relationships, just to be able to get closer to people.
Oftentimes I've heard that in order to, if you feel hurt in a relationship, then the only way to heal is in a relationship. And that it also comes from the perspective of not trying to personalize those things, not trying to, I guess, kind of see attacks. And Srila Gurudev also highlights this too. He mentions about if someone criticizes you, then don't engage with them back, don't criticize them back. But if someone criticizes you, then, it's almost like you just kind of give your pranam, you accept it and you sort of move on. So in relationships, when it comes to this sort of healthy communication, and I also want you to, I guess, highlight a little bit about what healthy communication actually is, versus, kind of the screaming, the yelling, the big, kind of conflict where we can just sort of like slam things down and we want to make our position heard, and we slam doors and things of that nature, rather than kind of being calm and feeling and sitting with ourselves, really thinking about how we should respond rather than react. And then, how we can also be able to create that space for someone else, so that they also don't personalize the situation so heavily, and they don't feel that any correction is an attack to their ego. I know I just put a whole bunch, there's probably like 15 questions in there, but
that's wonderful. I'd say more, but you're asking, so I'll humbly offer what I can. There is what you say about not criticizing, and what Srila Prabhupada and Srila Gurudev say and the Vaishnavas say. It is both the process and the goal. It is a process when you are able to stand in your own strength and recognize that someone is expressing their own stuff, right? Their own story. And yet, critique, or feedback as we call it, is a gift for us to learn. The issue is whether or not one is ready for it. That has to do with a lot of things. Why I always go back to chakras or internal is because, coming out of our head and just into feeling, where are we vibing? Where are we connecting? Is my heart feeling this? Can I speak? Is my, root? Am I feeling secure? And why? These are what leads us up to being able to walk in the world as adults. Adulting, we'll call it, right? We could say many things. And being able to be light is so important, and be loving and not criticize. And yet we're also talking about boundaries. We're also talking about instruction. We're also talking about feedback. So it's a really important discussion. And, we'll spend all our time listening to, whether it's Jaiva Dharma or Srimad Bhagavatam, we know Chaitanya Charitamrita is the most important essential advice and instructions, but it only shows up when we're in a relationship. So in regards to taking feedback and taking instruction, I don't know exactly how one is ever totally ready to know themselves unless they are ready to step outside of themselves for a moment. And, we're not conditioned to do that. And listening is, of course, the first step. I am a fan of nonviolent communication in the same way. I'm the most fan of Srimati Jaishree Didi and everyone, who really practices it. And I've been just like, it's the most beautiful thing. And I hope it's a goal, but a lot of people won't be able to actually do that. And that's why we do soul mapping with couples, because the pulling apart of what's underneath is quite important. And that is the medicine. We all, Srila Prabhupada also says that temples are like something like they're hospitals, and they can be hospitals for the heart. They can also be psych wards. But to have the goal in front and to move that goal forward, there's going to have to be boundaries. There's going to have to be instruction. It may be the best place to learn about yourself, and it may be the hardest place because there isn't a lot of introspection time. And that's why people do retreats, or they do a training, or they go to a healing. If I can just be with my osteopath for 20 minutes and he can move the juice in my brain, I can realign. And that is the medicine in the practice. That's why people do yoga, or they talk therapy, or whatever it is. So like the therapy I did for 4 years, I sat in my therapist's chair, and she's an amazing woman. She was the disciple of a very well-known teacher who was very mystical and also criticized a lot, controversial. But before that, she was like a Tibetan Buddhist monk for many years. And then she had a child, and she's, moved on. So she does this Gestalt method, which is a really hardcore, ripping your ego apart, getting really down to it. And that is part of why I'm able to offer that. But if it wasn't for bhakti, it wouldn't be as soft. It would be too laser-like and too harsh. So I guess to the question of, we say it again now, like how we take instruction without taking it personal. It is personal.
Yeah. So like kind of what I learned is not sort of personalizing it. It doesn't necessarily have to be instruction, so to say, but because what you're saying, the critique is sort of natural. It's the feedback. And that's how we learn, which I totally gel with. But sometimes I guess maybe some people don't have that knack for the nonviolent communication. They don't have that knack for that ability to be able to communicate in a very non-threatening way towards the other person. And so they communicate in the way that they know, in the way that they've experienced, in the way that they're processing through their trauma, or are processing through their trauma, however it is, wherever they are in their journey. But I guess what I'm trying to sort of uncover is, how can we do better? Like, how can we do better in creating the space of communication and healthy communication that is not attacking, and then also do better in the sense of, not, if it is attacking, how do we not personalize the attack? So then it's almost like, okay, it's attacking our ego. I'm feeling like about it. I don't want to associate with this person because they've hurt me in some way, or they're judging me, or what have you. So that's kind of what I'm trying to.
There's a non Vedic saying, it's check yourself before you wreck yourself, right? How do we check ourselves? It is listening. Practicing listening is a very difficult skill. And what that means is you have to sit with yourself. Being in awareness is not an easy thing. Like actually feeling, especially if you're in pain. But that, perhaps that's why I am in the position I am to, offer as healer and teacher and all those things, whatever it is that I finally, it's taken a long time to accept instead of just do for me, but that's my own stuff. It's because I've sit in pain so much. And when you're in discomfort, you have to find a way out. Now, that's called mukti. That's called liberation. People think that's the goal of life. That's not the real goal of life. The goal is bhakti. The goal is relationship in a joyful, like we're all running around feeling our bliss by serving God, by serving and thus each other. And so that is the goal. And when someone feels that, they want to keep it. They don't want to leave it. And I understand that. You probably understand that. So someone coming in a different mood, it's all about mood and offering. If you're on a higher vibration, anyone, and you feel someone come at you with a desire to control or their own pain, or they're saying it out of abandonment and feeling left out or something, these are like core issues, then if you're on a higher vibration, you're going to feel that. Now, what you're asking is, how do you allow yourself to feel that either from a radically vulnerable place or from a really happy place, and not, mess up the communication, not make the communication ugly, not create karma. And that's the first thing. Yes, honey, it's understanding that someone is either in pain and they're like expressing off, just trying to survive. They are in abandonment, also a fight or flight way of being, or they're needing to control, which is a big one. And if you feel that from someone, it's not going to feel good. And so we have to understand that in ourselves first and learn how to invite. It's about inviting. I want to invite you into this seva. I want to invite you into considering that you're acting like an a-hole. I want to invite you to consider that you're spitting on me and I'm trying not to, just don't want so much spit on my face, right? It's an invitation. And other than that, otherwise it's a command, or it's, like, we don't want a command. We want to be in the right lane, and there's a softer, sweeter mood to inviting.
And so the invitation is, from all the things that you've discussed today, in terms of the invitation is really, it's coming from that place of having healthy boundaries. And it's coming from that place of, having a sort of sense of control, like you're at that sort of higher vibration, where you don't want to be, kind of tainted with the other. It looks like it's leaves. It's leaves. It looks like it's snowing there.
Autumn. I know. No, it's beautiful. It's the most beautiful time, autumn in New England.
Yeah, it's very nice.
Yeah.
But it's the invitation aspect of it is something that I find probably the first time that I've actually heard it being expressed that way. It's very beautiful. Is that I'm kind of, inviting you into my space to engage in a healthy conversation, to not be attacked, because that's something, the boundary is the non-consent, what you said, that I'm not going to accept being disparaged or being a character assassination or being told that I am XYZ when I know in myself that I'm not. And that I'm only that basically I can also deny the invitation too.
You can say no.
Yeah.
And so when you, and we'll just put the spotlight on you, when you know that you have something of a higher taste to offer, and when you know that, then you're in service, you're offering that. And the funny part is that we all are that. That is our essential nature. We are part and parcel of everything that's divine. And that is the portal. That is the pivot. It's all about what's the pivot, and then practicing that pivot and wanting to give always. It's always about service, and if we're, I think that the thing that's also not being said is that people they just take a lot. And there's vampire energy. There's emotional and mental vampire energy. And so my responsibility is to not get a migraine, right? Say that's a goal. So if my responsibility is to not, that means, what does it mean? Then I can spend a whole life on this, but, oh, I'm depleted. What am I depleted of? Maybe I'm just depleted of water. So if I'm in a relationship with someone and it may feel like they're saying something and it's hurting me, but actually I just need water. I'm the only one responsible for doing that. Or if someone offers me gluten or soy, I'm terribly allergic. How do I say no to prasadam? That's a big one, right? Big one for devotees is eating and prasadam and taking, and that's a boundary also, right? How do you be sovereign and sacred at the same time? So when I was saying for you, as how does it feel to know that you have something to give? Does it make you feel more than? Does it make you feel shy? Usually it's just a very balanced feeling. Just to know I have something to offer. And that way, that affects my mood when I speak to someone. If I know I have something to offer and I don't want to take from them, and I will allow myself to receive the good, but I'm not going to take on the ugly. That's like the angle of, or, the adjunct of being both sovereign and sacred, being sweet and clear. And the practice of that will lead to confidence, and then you will hurt yourself less and hurt others less.
Yeah, I once heard from someone being sweet but firm in our dealings with others, and that really creates the healthy boundaries and
great one.
The invitation. And I really like that you mentioned that. And then something else that you also said was actually also quite profound was, we're reading Jaiva Dharma, we're reading Srimad Bhagavatam, reading Chaitanya Charitamrita, all the books, Srila Prabhupada, Srila Gurudev, but that the only time that they actually come into practice is in a relationship.
Yeah.
You can read all you want and get all the gyan that you want, but you have to be able to know how to deal with relationship. You have to know how to deal with, yes, we have a relationship with Bhagavan, but that relationship, while it's eternal and it's always present, is still at a bit of a distance. It's, at least in my case, I can only speak for myself. But then to actually, when you're having that eternal relationship with Sri Guru, and that is even more closer to our hearts, and we can interact with Sri Guru daily, and then the other piece of that is also our God siblings, and our God siblings can sometimes also be our spouses, can sometimes also be our friends, our neighbors, our parents, our children, our aunts, uncles, they can be more than just our spiritual family. They can actually be a blood relation, or even be some other type of relationship.
They can be your business partner.
They can be your business
co-parent, and I'm sure we'll be talking about that more later. And when we are with other couples, which is vital. And you made me think of something very specific, but Vaishnavas also always say, you can't fake it. You can't fake sweetness, but you don't have to, if you can go inside of yourself and feel it. And we all know that dryness, especially in bhakti, the dryness comes, why? Because it's not being integrated and practiced in relationship. It's not, judgment is not discernment. I'm just throwing some things out there that I live by. Judgment is very different from discernment. Discernment is vital. Discernment has the qualities and tastes of mood. It's a higher intelligence. It's a deeper intelligence. Your mind just goes this or that, right? So to honor the mind, but to honor the intelligence and to honor discernment means you're painting your life. You're painting the tapestry of your life every moment in every single choice. And that's we always be in awareness, then pivot to your core desire so that you can make awesome choices. You have to that's the practice. And of course, all the books are helping us and hi, honey, and everything. And then there's the actual interaction every moment that's bringing us back to our humanity. That's why this pandemic was so horrible, because it isolated people. The goal is isolate. Isolation is torture. It is one way to torture, and to not have that. And that's not to say someone can't live all on their own and in the forest. That's a spiritual practice, of course, but most of us are not meant to do that. And actually, most of us are meant to be in partnerships so that we can be relating and learning and growing. Some of us are meant to be in lots of relationships and work with lots of people. That really brings in boundaries and how to do some shielding work and all that, which is really, really vital also.
Yeah, absolutely. I know that we're kind of getting towards the end of our time, until an hour and a half later. But I wanted to, I guess, just kind of ask for probably what are your top maybe 2 or 3 things that you could give as tips, advice on individuals who say perhaps are dealing with an unhealthy relationship at this present time, whether it be with someone else or whether it be with themselves. Because I think both are necessary, really. And you've highlighted so much about the need for protecting ourselves. And then it extends into that interaction with others. So probably what are your top 3 things or top 5 things or what have you that you could give as tips and advice for individuals who might be in those situations?
It's a beautiful question. I'll give the first of the 3. It'll sound sort of macro, big, and I'll try to make it micro and useful and a repeatable, reliable, relatable nugget. First, I have this line that I always say, which is, it's slay demons and ride dragons. Slay demons is meaning do your shadow work, know your boundaries, do the work, and figure out what's coming at you that is either demonic or negative, like we were talking about. What is the feedback coming? Where is the critique? Where is it coming from? It will help you respond to it. At the same time, know the magic that is available. Know how to ride a dragon. Don't be pulled by it and like dragging your feet. Learn to get up on it and steer. Take the reins of your senses and the horses, right? And so for those who are alone, and always feeling that need, man, it's really hard. It's really hard. I would say ask yourself, what is the one thing you would never do? Or the thing you don't want to do? And just consider inviting in whatever that is to sit with you in front of you, like meet it as a friend. Consider that. And then that is the other thing. Know that everyone is a friend that you haven't met yet. Because every bit of feedback you've ever gotten can shift your life in a second.
Hmm.
And it's so whether you're in a coupleship, we call it, or you're on your own. So yeah, slay demons, ride dragons, invite in that which you have not looked at before, because it's probably the greatest gift of your life, especially now when the veil is so thin and the time is good to do the work. And then consider that everyone in your life, even now, is a friend you haven't met, but the same with all of your shadows, all the feedback. There's something on the other side.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think this is a great, like I said in the very beginning, I was having a little bit of technical issues, so I guess the beginning part wasn't actually recorded, which I so unfortunately regret. But I think that this conversation was just like a great prelude into what's going to take place an hour and a half later, to really dive into understanding the core of grihast, and now from a youthful perspective, in comparison to the last panel, which was amazing. And I'm so grateful to all of them for giving their time. And I want to have them back on. So, but this will at least provide an opportunity for, me to discuss more questions that are more relatable to our generation, as opposed to, that generation, the seniors in our Sangha. So I wanted to also invite you to, I know that you have the teacher training coming up. So I wanted to invite you to be able to speak a little bit more about that, and then we'll conclude today's session. But for those of you who are watching now, or who might watch the recording, that don't leave us, Jaishree Didi is going to be back, this time with her husband, Kalanidhi Prabhu, as well as two other couples, Anuradha and Gopal Krishna, as well as Chaitanya Shakti and Haridas. And we will be discussing a little bit more in terms of the grihast perspective at 5 o'clock. So please stay tuned for that. So Jaishree Didi, please, you can offer your announcement.
Thank you. Thank you so much for this. It's amazing. And I do look forward to going deeper. And actually that's kind of why we do the yoga teacher training. It's like every conversation that you ever want to have to get really nitty gritty and go deep, we allow into the space safely. And then we teach people how to give and receive feedback. And so, we're doing that starting October 16th and 17th. And it will be online, recorded, but it's also in person. So it's kind of like coming for a retreat. And then we'll continue to evolve how we do that. So October 16th and 17th, we are doing scholarships because we also are Sanctuary Mission Trust. And we did that so that we could support, especially devotees. And so just tuning in about applying for a scholarship is absolutely okay. And in general, everything is on my website, jaishreeyoga.com. And if anyone wants to chat for 20 minutes, just go to the little button that says set up a destiny call, and we can just connect and chat. And some people just really need that. And I'm happy to offer that. So jaishreeyoga.com, and the Soul Culture Yoga School starts October 16th and 17th.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you so much, Didi.
Thank you.
And we'll reconvene in an hour and a half at 5 o'clock.
Perfect.
So again, for anyone who might be watching right now live, that please come back at 5 o'clock. We will actually have more couples, and we'll actually be joined by Jaishree Didi's husband. So we'll go into a little bit more detail in terms of married life and in a Krishna conscious manner.
It'll be good. It's going to be good.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I
Thank
am so
you.
grateful. Vanchikopa Trubhis
Hare Bo, Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Didi. Hare Bo.
Yeah.